I just wanted to give my quick thoughts on something, and that was the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. Everyone is going crazy. I know I'm late to the game. Everyone's already posted their thoughts about this. I wanted to kind of wait till like the hype train just died down just a little bit so I can talk about this because I don't really have a popular opinion. I have no hype whatsoever for this movie, and I'm probably gonna skip out on it. Oh crap! It's the Marvel fanboys! No! No, yeah, I'm just not really hyped for it, and I'm gonna try to explain as clearly as possible why, it's just, let's get into it. Let's first talk about what works in the Sam Raimi movies. So Spider-Man 1, 2, and even Spider-Man 3 to a certain extent. Sam Raimi definitely knows his Spider-Man. He has a lot of heart, and one of the criticisms people give to the Sam Raimi movies is that they're cheesy, and they're outdated, and people don't really get it. They're intentionally cheesy. Like, I don't understand why people criticize this movie for being outdated. It was outdated, quote unquote, outdated, when it was first released, okay? When you go to the theater in 2002 and see Spider-Man, and someone says, "Hey, look, it's Spider-Man!" and it cuts to Spider-Man swinging, Sam Raimi was not taking himself seriously. He knew he was adapting a Spider-Man movie and decided to take a cheesy angle to it. If you've seen the Evil Dead movies, especially Army of Darkness, you would understand this. Army of Darkness is a very campy movie. So is the Spider-Man movies. And I think that's what people especially don't understand about the third Spider-Man movie. They criticize emo Peter Parker, which I get, he's hilarious. He's intentionally supposed to be a doofus. People say, "Oh, is that what people think is cool, going around the street doing this?" I'm like, no. Sam Raimi doesn't think it's cool. Like, you guys don't get it. Imagine the biggest dweeb of your class all of a sudden shows up to your class and is an emo, like, edgelord. That's what Spider-Man 3 was trying to do. I hate it when people criticize emo Peter Parker. That's not the problem with Spider-Man 3. Anyway, regardless of Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi has heart. And Sam Raimi portrays that heart with several means. First of all, his cinematography is very unique. I was listening to an interview with Bruce Campbell where he says Sam Raimi legit took the fattest textbook of cinematography and read through it page by page. And it shows because he does some really cool camera trickery with the 3 Spider-Man movies. The score is very inspiring. That's what you want in a Spider-Man score. Whenever I hear that Danny Elfman theme, I want to be Spider-Man. Now I'm 23, and I have hair on my ass. I probably shouldn't be admitting to wanting to be Spider-Man, but damn it, I do want to be Spider-Man. Leave me alone. Most of all, what Sam Raimi did well is that it wasn't about Spider-Man. It was about Peter Parker. And Peter Parker, especially in Spider-Man 2, he's trying his best. He's trying to attend classes, he's living in a dingy apartment, he's trying to care for Aunt May, and he's spinning all of these plates while trying to be Spider-Man. And he's doing them all half-assed. He's constantly getting criticized. He's getting criticized by his boss at the pizza parlor. "Parker, you're late again!" He's getting criticized by his girlfriend, who he doesn't have enough time to care for. He's getting criticized by his teacher, who's saying that his grades are dipping, and he's getting criticized for being Spider-Man. And at that point, he's just like, who am I doing this for? And he just lets go of everything. The movie Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 1, and Spider-Man 3, they're not movies about Spider-Man. They're movies about Peter Parker. That's something very fundamental to the character of Peter Parker, because when Stan Lee wrote the original comic books, he didn't want to make another superhero. He wanted it to connect with readers on that level. He didn't want people thinking like, "Oh, Spider-Man is cool." Yes, of course he did want that to a certain extent, but the reason why Spider-Man connected with people is because of the character. And that's a reoccurring thing with all the most popular superheroes. People don't like Batman. People like Bruce Wayne. People don't like Iron Man. People like Tony Stark. It's about the character, not about the alter ego. Now I'm going to talk about what the Disney Spider-Man movies do well. Especially the first one. I think the first Disney Spider-Man movie is so far the best one. What I think the Disney Spider-Man movies do well is, first of all, they took it back to high school, which I didn't mind Peter Parker being in university. As a university student myself, I think is more relatable at this point. But I like the fact that he took it back to high school, and it has a bit of that John Hughes vibe. I felt like I was watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off or The Breakfast Club, one of those movies. A lot of people criticize diversity in this film, saying that it's a bit too hammy and forced. While I do criticize some movies for doing that, I think Spider-Man Homecoming is a perfect example of how you have a diverse group of kids, and it kind of works in that movie. They changed the race of Mary Jane. Now she's played by Zendaya, and Flash Thompson is no longer this buff white dude. He's like the scrawny Indian dude. I like those changes. I thought those changes worked because the story of Spider-Man is getting so overdone that you have to make those changes. And for it to look more like a public high school is something that I think is a cool direction. So the teen drama is what works for me. And so far, the two villains that were presented in the two Disney Spider-Man movies, Mysterio and the Vulture, were really well done and well performed. Jake Gyllenhaal played Mysterio, and Michael Keaton played the Vulture, and I thought they were two really good villains. They had a bit more dimension than your Sam Raimi movies. I'll admit that, as much as I'm a diehard Sam Raimi fan. Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Venom, it's all these characters that have good intentions, but then all of a sudden something happens to them and they become crazy against their will, and they have a change of heart at the end. I feel like the villains in the newer Spider-Man movies are overall more well done than the original Spider-Man movies, which is quite a shock because the Disney Marvel movies usually have terrible villains, Thanos aside. Now for what I don't like about the Disney Spider-Man movies. First of all, the suit. I hate the suit. I think it's so stupid. And it goes with this bigger problem I have with the new Spider-Man movies. A lot of people criticize the Sam Raimi movies because how is a high schooler supposed to make his own Stitch costume? And again, Sam Raimi is just making an adaptation of a comic book. That is like more acceptable in a comic book, and all of the Sam Raimi movies are an adaptation of the comic book. So cheesy elements like that are going to carry over. So it never really bothered me, but it seemed to bother the internet. So now they had it so that Tony Stark builds Spider-Man's costume. And that shows a bigger problem I have with the Marvel Disney Spider-Man movies, is that Spider-Man is always second fiddle to someone else. In the first one, he's second fiddle to Tony Stark, and in the second one, he's second fiddle to Nick Fury. The other big problem I have with the newer Spider-Man movies is that Peter Parker is always fucking up. Everything that happens, everything that goes wrong in these movies are the consequence of Peter's poor decisions. Which I understand if you do that in the first movie, because he's just learning how to be Spider-Man and he's gonna fuck up and Tony Stark disciplines him for it. But in the second Spider-Man movie, it's like, at this point, just become competent. I'm a bit of a dick, but he has like this Tony Stark glasses, and he lets them fall into the hands of Jake Gyllenhaal, who's the bad guy. That was a stupid mistake, and it makes me lack sympathy for this character if he can't even cover his own ass. So we talked about what works in the Disney movies, what doesn't work in the Disney movies, and the reason why I like Spider-Man Homecoming versus Spider-Man Far From Home is that the things I like are more highlighted in Homecoming, while the things I didn't like are more highlighted in Spider-Man Far From Home. And there seems to be this trend, and it seems to be carrying over into the third movie. I complained about Peter Parker kind of always fucking up, and everything that goes wrong are a consequence of his actions. In this new movie, he literally breaks the space-time continuum, which was a result of him. Like, he asked Doctor Strange to fix the past, and he seemed to fuck it up, and now there's all these alternate realities going on, which I thought Peter Parker couldn't fuck up more than giving the bad guy Tony Stark's technology in the second movie. He seems to be outdoing himself in this movie. I complained about him being second fiddle to Tony Stark. That trend is continuing in this movie. where now that Tony Stark is dead, he seems to be second fiddle to Doctor Strange. And there's been some leaked information out there that while he did have an Iron Man suit in the first two Spider-Man movies, now he will have a Doctor Strange suit where he's laced with magic, which adds to what I don't like about the Spider-Man movies. Now, you guys are saying, who gives a fuck about Tom Holland's Spider-Man? You're here for Tobey. You're here for Andrew Garfield. Which I get. I understand that. When I saw Dr. Octopus show up, I got a little bit of a nostalgia sting, I'm not gonna lie. But I don't know. To me, the star of the original Spider-Man movies, it wasn't Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus, though he did a great job. It wasn't Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin. It wasn't even Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. The two stars are Danny Elfman, who did the score, and Sam Raimi, who directed the movies. And the direction of the new Spider-Man movies, they're a bit bland because it has to fit in the wider MCU. You have to believe that this universe is the same as the one in Ant-Man, is the same as the one in Doctor Strange. So you can't do as crazy cinematography like Sam Raimi was doing in the original Spider-Man trilogy. So to me, this new one just kind of feels a little lazy, kind of just banking on that nostalgia train, which I might go see it just for that, but at the same time, it's like, I can just pop in Spider-Man 2 and get nostalgia from it, just watching Spider-Man 2 on Blu-ray. Some other things I don't like about the direction of the new Spider-Man movies. I don't like CGI de-aging. I don't think we're at that point yet where I can believe it. When Alfred Molina first showed up, I was like, wow, that's a lot of CG on his face. This is an early trailer. The movie's coming out in December. It might get better, but at the same time, I watched The Irishman, which at the time that was the most cutting edge CGI de-aging you can do. That was done by ILM. But I didn't really buy it in The Irishman, so I doubt that I'm gonna buy it in this movie much more. Who knows? I might be proven wrong on that one. A lot of decisions just feel a little lazy to me. So when you first see that claw, the Dr. Octopus arm, show up in the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, it's like a CG arm, which, when you look at Spider-Man 2, that was such an achievement in practical effects. They had a green screen, and you had people in this green spandex holding sticks, and they would control themselves Dr. Octopus's arms.
If I were a rich man.
Which is pretty fun to watch. And those arms, they really feel like they're there. And I feel like Disney is going to take the cheaper route of just making it CG arms, which goes against what Sam Raimi was all for, which he's the director of the Evil Dead movies. He was a huge proponent of practical effects, which again goes to show how much heart Sam Raimi had. Another thing, and this is going to sound like a nitpick, so at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, we see J. Jonah Jameson, and he's kind of like this Alex Jones character, which I did like that angle. I watched my brother play video games, and he was playing the Spider-Man video game. He's basically Alex Jones in that video game, and I thought that was super interesting, very entertaining, and I'm happy that the movies went with that direction for J. Jonah Jameson.
In his misguided delusion that he is protecting us, is he hacking into all our conversations? Business deals, credit card transactions, those personal calls with the wife when you're on a long, lonely book tour.
At the same time, I don't like the fact he's bald, which that hairdo and that mustache is so iconic to J. Jonah Jameson. Why would you remove it? And it has me question, are they going to change the design of Green Goblin or Dr. Octopus? Are they going to make them look slightly different as though they're from different alternate realities? Which, the way I see it, is like, why even do that? The Green Goblin costume, even though it looks like a shitty Power Rangers villain, it's iconic at this point. Just bring it back. It doesn't need to be upgraded with CGI. Same thing with Dr. Octopus. Electro apparently is not going to be blue in this movie. So it has me think, are they just going to do some slight changes to each of these actors just for the sake of being different? Or is there going to be a logical explanation to it? If you're going to have the characters come back, go all the way. Don't like add some changes just for the sake of saying, oh, I changed a few things. Either go all the way or kind of don't do it, is how I feel. Undoing that stupid toupee and the mustache from J. Jonah Jameson, and they seem to be doing that with Electro and with Green Goblin. I'm not that big a fan of it, to be honest. That's what I mean. The decisions kind of just feel like lazy. And most of all, this trailer, I get it, we're hyped for the original Sam Raimi characters to come back. But what is this movie about? What is Spider-Man's arc? We just had Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I thought was a really cool movie. And the character had a beautiful arc in that movie. Is this movie gonna have that, or is it just gonna bank on the nostalgia of seeing all three Spider-Men together? Maybe I'll catch clips on YouTube and be like, oh, that's neat. But it's like, a movie is more than that to me. If this is a step in the direction of getting a Spider-Man 4, then I'm all on board for it. If Tobey Maguire is returning in this movie, and Sam Raimi is directing Doctor Strange 2, that does leave the potential that they can revisit Spider-Man 4 and make Sam Raimi's original vision for Spider-Man 4, which, if this movie is a step in that direction, then I'll fucking buy 10,000 tickets just to show that I'm down for a Spider-Man 4. But as a standalone movie, am I hyped for it? I'll wait for more trailers. Maybe we'll learn more about Peter Parker, Tom Holland, what he is going through in high school, which I doubted because he's going to be traveling to alternate dimensions. Yeah. I hate to rain on everyone's parade, but that's just how I feel. Come at me, haters!